I didn't expect to see this birthday, Anna, to be quite honest. I'm not just saying that for impact. The reality is that back in 2017, I was given 7 years. I wasn't sure if I would be here, but as it is, I am, and that's because medicine and science has moved forwards. I'm still looking for that stem cell donor match, as are many, many hundreds of thousands of people.
Hi, welcome to At Work With, a podcast where I sit down with industry leaders to uncover the stories, challenges, and defining moments that have shaped their remarkable careers. Today's conversation and guest is very close to my heart. I first met Pete in 2018 in a small coffee shop in Chiswick. My dad had recently been diagnosed with blood cancer, and it was a wake-up call. I was desperate to do something, anything, to help others in the same situation. As a new DKMS ambassador, I was full of questions of how I could support the charity and really make an impact. When Pete walked into that coffee shop, I met someone who had just been given 7 years to live following his myeloma diagnosis in 2017. Yet here he was, taking time to sit with me, a stranger, sharing his wisdom and experience and showing me what real resilience looks like. Over coffee, he shared insights and ideas about fundraising and recruiting stem cell donors, as well as giving me so much hope. His passion and determination were infectious even then. 7 years later, Pete has not only outlived his diagnosis, but has transformed from patient advocate to CEO of DKMS UK, one of the world's largest stem cell donor registration organisations. 1,000 Donors campaign has exceeded all expectations, registering over 150,000 potential donors and giving countless blood cancer patients, just like my dad was, a hope for a second chance at life. Today, we'll explore Pete's extraordinary journey from Vice President at Royal Bank of Scotland to a non-profit leader, and we'll discover how his personal experience continues to drive DKMS's vital mission. But more than that, we'll hear from someone who turned his own devastating diagnosis into a force for change, inspiring thousands along the way. Hi, Pete.
Hi, Anna. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Very well. Thank you so much for inviting me on. It's a very cool thing to be
I'm
doing.
so excited to have you on, and thank you so much for agreeing to do this. I know I keep coming to you like Lou does with random requests, and somehow you come and say yes.
Trust me,
So
over the last 7 years, I've had much more random requests than this. So this is a pleasant one to be getting engaged with.
But I mean, for those that are listening, so Louise, she's actually the person that actually connected us. So she works at DKMS. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. Right. Okay, Pete. So I would love to just get straight into it, just because I feel like I've got lots of questions for you. But I'm going to start firstly with just yourself. So your journey, Pete, to becoming CEO of DKMS now has been like a deeply personal one. And obviously I know how that's transitioned, but I'd love for you to just expand a bit on that for our listeners.
Yeah, of course. I mean, the job I have now is an absolute genuine privilege. I know that term is often bandied around and not given much credence, but for me personally, I certainly couldn't have foreseen this 8 years ago. I occasionally sort of talk to friends about, where I find myself today, and even if I'd have had, a crystal ball, I just can't see how these sliding doors moments would necessarily have led to being in the great position to be able to influence the direction, the strategy, and ultimately the potential life chances for those patients in need of the work that DKMS do. I guess taking it right back prior to 2017, pretty standard life, all in all. I'm in a lucky position to be married, 2 kids, and at the time, back in 2017, was working in investment banking, finance in London, and thoroughly, having a great time. I really enjoyed my career. I was quite lucky in that I did enjoy my work, and as challenging as it was, I was able to go home at the end of each day and broadly speaking, be quite happy that things were the way they were. 16 was a great year for me. I'd committed to doing what a lot of people do when they hit a certain age, especially blokes. It's you either get a silly car or you seem to get into triathlon, and that's what I jumped into. Spent 2016 training for a big race in Wales and completed that. But a couple of days after completing it, very unexpectedly ended up in hospital with a bit of a bizarre concoction of pneumonia, sepsis and Legionnaires. Got over that, thankfully, in about 4 or 5 days. And thought I was back on the trail to training and getting fit and healthy again. But my progression back to health wasn't going at the pace the doctors expected, and led to a bunch of tests. And I won't go into all the details, but ultimately, when 2017 landed, I was sent for a CT scan because of some laboured breathing. They thought there was some scarring on the lung from the pneumonia. As it was, it transpired that I was very, very lucky to be in the system. And when they sent me for that CT scan, they noticed these lesions on my rib cage. It looked like an osteoporosis, which at the age of 37, you wouldn't expect someone of my age to have. They did a full body scan. These lesions were everywhere. So top to bottom, skull to toes. It looked like I was a Swiss cheese. When you see the scan, it was myeloma. It was a blood cancer, which I've never heard of. And when I was told about this, obviously knocks you for six. You don't expect to get that sort of diagnosis anyway, certainly at that age, but that's where I was. And myeloma is incurable. And at the time, I was told that given the treatments available, that I might have 7 years left, which was obviously quite a sobering moment. Life stops, everything changes. Now,
and you were 37 at that time.
Yeah, 37 years old, and again, completely unexpected. Now, the caveat that came with that 7-year prognosis was that if I could find a stem cell donor, and for those people who may be listening who don't know what that is, it's basically your genetic twin. So a stem cell is the precursor to all cells in our bodies. We all have them right now. Anyone who's listening, you've got millions of these things swimming around your blood, differentiating into hair, skin, blood cells, keeping your body fit and healthy. Now, there were certain cells in my immune system that were not fit and healthy. And although myeloma couldn't be cured, if I could find that genetic twin, they could donate me their stem cells and then buy more time. And that's precisely what the last 8 years has been all about. It's about buying time. Because of my heritage, Chinese, Portuguese, Irish and English, it's infinitely more difficult for people of mixed race, underrepresented groups, if you will, to find their stem cell donor match. And the more I looked into this, the more I realized that this was an area I could influence. Because the thing that really I struggled with, the cancer diagnosis was awful, but it was the knock-on effect to my kids, my family, what life looks like for them more than anything. I could focus on me, but the impact on them, they're quite disparate from that decision. And it strips away a lot of agency. I struggled with that. What I could influence was the chances of finding that stem cell donor match. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized there was a really significant problem here, in that hundreds of thousands of people right now, today, will be told that they could potentially have their blood cancers either managed and in some instances cured, but they can't because their stem cell donor match is not on the register. That gave me something to grab hold of. It gave me a sense of agency. And after going through about 18 months of chemotherapy and a lot of time away from the family, I decided to try and directly influence those odds, running campaigns, educationals, doing projects to raise awareness of this issue. And that's what aligned me with DKMS. And in the intervening 7 years, I mean, the great thing is that I've just turned 47 yesterday. I didn't expect to see this birthday, Anna, to be quite honest. I'm not just saying that for impact. The reality is that back in 2017, I was given 7 years. I wasn't sure if I would be here, but as it is, I am, and that's because medicine and science has moved forwards. I'm still looking for that stem cell donor match, as are many, many hundreds of thousands of people. But because of the work that I've been able to do, projects, engaging with yourself, I've been able to suddenly sliding doors my way to 2025 and be in the position of not just volunteering for DKMS, but actually being in a position to set the strategy, set the direction, and help more people through the organisation.
It is such a full circle moment. It takes me back. So I think the first time we met was in 2018. I think we met in a coffee shop in Chiswick. So for my listeners who won't know, the way I got involved in DKMS, of course, was my father was diagnosed with blood cancer. And so I was doing a lot of kind of low-level advocacy, not on your level, Pete, but low-level advocacy, trying to find stem cell donors and matches. And so just very briefly on my story, my dad was able to find a stem cell donor, and he actually outlived his diagnosis by another 2 years. So unfortunately, he did pass away after 2.5 years. But I know firsthand the impact that it had on us as a family, finding that stem cell match. With my dad getting a donor within 6 months of his diagnosis, he was able to obviously spend so much more time with us. He was able to see me kind of grow in my career. He was able to meet my now husband. I think I'm a real life example of that family, because I think when someone gets cancer, it's the person itself, but it's all the people around them, whether it's their parents or their partners or their spouses, partners or their kids. So I completely, I am so biased when it comes towards this charity, because I've seen the real life. I'm part of that real life impact that your work has had. But I think what I'm saying is it's been such a full circle moment from that time we met in 2018 to try and figure out how we can raise more awareness to now you being the head of the charity, which is incredible. I remember seeing the LinkedIn post come up and I was shocked and I was like, oh my God, I think my husband was sitting in the room and I was like, oh my God, Peter's now the CEO. Look at that.
You're as shocked as me, Anna, trust me.
No, I was like, I couldn't have imagined anyone better to take the helm of this, just because there's just such a personal and deep connection there. And I really, you really understand kind of the end result and what that means. So I guess going back to, obviously you kind of had pretty much a full circle moment. I was listening to one of your podcasts where you're talking about just being a marketing tool for the charity. So it's a very, very full circle moment. But I mean, you spoke about running marathons and obviously you competed in the Ironman as well. How is that mindset? Obviously you need a certain level of discipline, right, to do things like the Ironman. How is that kind of mindset influenced your personal battle with this illness? And then of course, like your leadership approach now leading this company, or I guess this charity sector.
Yeah, it's a very fair question, and one I guess on a different day I could answer in many, many different ways. I think from a mindset perspective, I don't know whether this level of, I guess, maybe direction or commitment to certain things has always been there. I guess I recognize in myself a certain personality trait whereby if someone says I can't do something, then I tend to want to try and prove that I can do those sorts of things, and it might be ego driven. I don't know where that comes from, but I suspect that if I was to sort of look back over certain moments in life, whether it's college rugby or various things, maybe there was always something in there. And I suspect I've been quite open about this in the past. There's a certain insecurity that I guess that I carry, and I think it's driven, a lot of it is driven through wanting to show that I can do something, whereas I might naturally think I can't. And this goes, I mean, look, I'm sure there's some psychologists out there who will absolutely understand this. I was very lucky, and I met one of my friends over Christmas, actually. He now lives in Hong Kong. And I was talking to him about our friendship from when we were at primary school and college together. And I was lucky to fall in with a group of very intelligent, very talented friends, musicians, artists, and academically way superior to me, all of them. And so I love my sport. I hit my level playing rugby, but I was never going to go and play for England. But I guess because I was surrounded by really naturally smart and talented people, I mean, these are people who've gone on to do great things in their lives. I guess I always felt the need to try and play catch up all the time. And that was a driver I always had. And that nugget of insecurity maybe comes from that recognition of, I guess, my own, perhaps a lack of innate natural talent for certain things, but nothing that can't be overcome through commitment and practice and a bit of drive. So, playing amateur psychologist on myself, perhaps that insecurity, which is still there today, and I welcome it, to be quite honest. It used to be something which would hold me back, but for me now it's something which I'm glad is there, because it keeps me sharp, it keeps me focused, and it keeps me wanting to improve and do more things. Aligning that with the diagnosis, having done the Ironman, that was something I genuinely didn't think I could do. So going back to what I just said to you, it was a case of, I'm not a very good swimmer. Best become a good swimmer because I want to have a go at this. And that's what the 9 months leading up to September 2016 were all about. And the funny thing about the Ironman was that when I finished that, because I'd spent 9 months, 4 or 5 days a week training constantly, and it was up at 3:30 in the morning to a swimming in Manchester at 5 o'clock in the morning before work. It was going for a run after work, and thankfully I had a very supportive family to do it. That became a bit of a habit and a behavior, and it was, and I got used to it. And I think that in itself was a realization that when things become a habit and you see the improvements in yourself, it becomes quite a satisfying place to be. But I remember crossing the finishing line, and in my head, I had this moment where when I crossed that finishing line, I'm going to be jumping for joy. It's going to be the biggest moment of elation, second to my kids being born. I'm probably not going to get a bigger buzz than this. And I remember crossing the line, and I felt nothing, if in anything. I remember feeling quite sad, and I'm looking around and waiting for this buzz of adrenaline. Nothing came. And on reflection, I think it's because what I'd really underestimated was I'd become so fixated on that finish line, so fixated on finishing, that I'd stopped enjoying the process of getting to the moment of actually doing it. The race in itself, in hindsight, was a sideshow, secondary to the overall process. Ironman's all about the commitment to the training. It's the process, it's how you go about doing it. And that for me was a real wake-up call, because in my career, I've always been very willing to sacrifice what I do today for something in future. And that might be, I'm going to spend an extra 2 hours in the office and not go home and see my kids, or I'm going to miss out on a party because I have to go do something else for this promotion over there. And when it came to, I guess, everyone grows up and everyone starts a little bit more about themselves. When it came to the diagnosis, it became clear to me that I was jumping back into old habits in the early days. I was chasing blood results and I was wasting an entire month waiting for those results to come in. And the silly thing was, what I should be doing is getting the most out of every single day. And I'm not saying, forget about your responsibilities. I'm not saying about going on holidays, go buy cars and do stupid things. I'm just saying, really try and enjoy what's in front of you. And in a strange way, not that I've ever wished that I'd have got this diagnosis, but because I have, it really reframed me in terms of what's important. So back to your original question, whether it's the Ironman, whether it's in there from when I was a younger person, that insecurity, but then that drive and focus has brought me to a stage now where I've almost recognized I can't fight the cancer diagnosis. It's incurable. I can't beat that. But what I can do is make the most of what the opportunities are in front of me. And I can influence the odds of finding a stem cell donor match for anyone out there by being that marketing tool, that mouth, that campaigner. I can be a better dad by not necessarily, sacrificing everything for next week, but just spending a bit more time. And don't do it all the time. I'm not professing to be dad of the year by any stretch, but I try to be more mindful of those sorts of things. And when it comes to my role at DKMS, how has all of this influenced that? Forget the cancer diagnosis and what brought me to working for DKMS. I guess what I try and do now is focus quite heavily on how I go about doing the work and how I influence and direct and set the standard for those people who I'm very lucky enough to be working alongside. My role at DKMS as MD, I'm just the custodian of that role. At some point, someone else will come in and do it in a different way, and they'll take it in a different direction. I view that and it's a position of privilege that I get to help direct the careers of those people who come to DKMS. And I've been working on, we set the strategy for where we're going to go for the next 3 and 5 years last year. We're starting to see the results come through. But really what it comes down to, it's not about, again, I'm not chasing the goal. So the equivalent of the Ironman finish line for us would be KPIs and targets. What I'm saying constantly is they're just a measure. They will come. I've got no doubt that we will hit our targets. We will smash our targets this year, as long as we do it in the right way and being clear on how we go about doing it. For me personally, what is the mandate of DKMS? Yes, it's about finding a stem cell match for every blood cancer patient. But really, my vision for DKMS in the UK now is I want our charity, our organisation I want it to be an environment in which everybody who either works for us, volunteers for us, or engage with us comes through it, their life is improved in some way. And as a patient, you want to help them to find their match. As someone who works there, I want someone to come to work at DKMS, and if they decide to leave at some point, be better in their career and their life because they've worked with us. It's how we go about doing that, and that's the environment I want to build.
Well, it's wonderful to hear. And I guess that kind of leads me to my next question. When you talk about obviously the transition, and you said like you were in banking, and I think you were in quite a substantive position in banking as well. So where and obviously you were advocating for DKMS. You ran the really successful 10,000 donors campaign, music singles, so much, right? I mean, I'll put it all in my credits after. But was there a specific moment, Peter, in the last 8 years where you said, okay, I'm going to now focus on this, not just on like a personal note, but also professionally? Like, was there a specific turning point or transition point where you were like, I'm going to just do DKMS now, nothing else?
I mean, the wonderful thing about what we're trying to achieve with DKMS is that what we're looking for is network and new ears to engage with. Doesn't matter whether you work in retail, media, logistics, operations. Fundamentally, we're trying to connect a blood cancer patient with their genetic twin, their stem cell donor match, and that person can be anywhere. And that realization for me is quite important because it means that we want to speak to everybody. Although we have strategies and we align our activities in certain areas because that's the right thing to do, we want to speak to everybody. Ultimately, we want to make sure that I hope no one ever gets a blood cancer diagnosis. I hope no one ever gets a cancer diagnosis. But that, unfortunately, that aspiration flies in the face of the reality that 1 in 2 people, sadly, will get a cancer diagnosis in their lifetime. And we have to recognize that. I just want everyone to have their insurance policy there, should they ever need it, on the stem cell donor register. And at the moment, if only 4% of the UK population are registered and about 0.5% of the global population are registered, you can see the scale of the problem that we have. It's a lack of numbers and a lack of diversity. With what I want to, was there a moment for me I guess I just jumped in to do projects I enjoyed. I like projects. I like, the wing walk was fun. I can't sing for toffee, and it was a karaoke, you can tell you that. But a friend of mine, he just introduced himself to me, and he said, I've heard your story. We're good mates now. I'm a musician. I'd like to write a song for you. He came up with that. 10,000 Donors was a vehicle to really motivate other people to engage, and that's what happened. So as much as I came up with an idea, the success of 10,000 Donors was predicated on everybody else, yourself included. I know you've got your personal story here, Anna, but the reality is you've opened up your story and your family and your work community as well to this particular project, and that's the measure of success. It's not me, it's not one person, it's what people have very generously given in terms of their time and energy. Because of that, I Crumble Rally, love cars, love hooning around doing stupid stuff. That was good fun. All these projects were things I enjoyed. I'm not going to lie from that. If you're going to do it, you must enjoy it. How we go about doing it is super important, and I've enjoyed every single project that 10,000 Donors was able to mobilize. I guess the key moment for me, there was always, I guess I'm acutely pragmatic about the chances of me finding a stem cell donor match because my heritage is so mixed. There are not many people of what are termed Macanese heritage, Chinese Portuguese anyway, let alone when they're mixed with Irish and English. And that's okay. I'm genuinely feel lucky that I'm still able to talk to you when I didn't expect to be here to talk to you. I take every single birthday after the one I had yesterday as an absolute bonus, and that's great for me. But I had to know, I had to be able to look at my kids throughout all these projects. I had to be able to look at my kids in the eye and genuinely be able to say that should the worst happen, which I'm still optimistic that won't happen in the near future, but I can hand on heart say to them, listen, lads, we did everything we possibly could. I think if I can do that, then that for me is a place of, I guess, I'll be able to sit there with a bit more of a peaceful head than if I've got anything left on the table. I don't leave anything on the table. That's the kicker. And so the moment that maybe you might, if you look at me to identify one thing, it was making sure that, I guess, on a personal level, I'd really investigated every possibility of finding that match for me. Again, I don't do 10,000 donors for me. I am acutely aware of the odds and the likelihood of finding that stem cell donor match. But at the end of last year, I was lucky enough to go to Macau. Every 4 years, there's an event that takes place where the Macanese diaspora from all over the world come to Macau and they spend a week celebrating, getting to know each other, cultural events, eating. And there were about 1,400 people of Macanese descent going to this event. And I spent all of last year making connections and trying to mobilize my engagement with that. And I did. I was able to go to Macau. I was able to give a presentation for 1,400 of these people, telling them my story, telling them how they might be able to help, meeting politicians and various other people, doing loads of media stuff. The trip was so much more of a success than I really hoped it would be. And because of that, there's nowhere else I can now go. Of all the projects that 10,000 donors did, that was for me personally the most significant. There's a documentary that ITV came and they filmed, but they're releasing that documentary in the next couple of months. That'll be on ITBX, which is amazing.
Exciting.
So it's one more chance to sort of tell the story there. But because I've done that, for me personally, there's nowhere else to go, and that's why that was the last of the 10,000 donors projects. It's now wound down, but because I've moved into my role at DKMS, I guess the brand of 10,000 donors will be absorbed into another initiative, which will be made public very shortly. I'm not going to step on my head of Markom's toes because that's his baby.
And on 10,000 donors, I think I was just reading that you obviously surpassed that by like loads, right? You're at 150,000 donors now, or is that ever growing?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've sort of lost the numbers. I know we're north of about 150,000 for sure.
Amazing.
And I know we've got more matches that are aligned as well. But again, it was never necessarily about the numbers per se, nor even the match. It was trying to find something which would capture people's engagement and keep them motivated and positive at what we're trying to achieve. More importantly, is getting the overall register bolstered with numbers, and 10,000 donors served its purpose. It was, I'm super proud of it. I genuinely am. It's one of those things which it started out me scribbling in bed one night, a couple of logos, and coming up with an idea. And then it grew and grew. And because people took it, people did things with it.
And also your vision, Pete, you had such a strong vision, such a clear direction of what you wanted to do. And like I said, like I think your passion is just so infectious. The moment you start talking about this, you can just, it's so infectious and it's so brilliant. And it's really interesting because now that you're on the other side, right? So you're on the other side now. So you're not, a campaigner, an advocate. Now you're actually leading the organization. How has kind of the challenges changed from being obviously someone who's actually fundraising for them and actually sitting in kind of the driver's seat almost? So like, I guess, especially in the UK, what are the biggest challenges that you're seeing in this arena when it comes to finding stem cell donors, blood cancer patients, to treatment, and just everything that comes with that?
I think more broadly in what you might call the marketplace, there are a few significant brands that underpin what we're trying to achieve. And I think sometimes we trip ourselves up. We've got different messages, different statistics that underpin the problem. And part of my job is to make sure I work more closely with my colleagues at the other charities, because that's what we are, to do the right thing and just make sure that we create a clear message. I think sometimes with the best of intentions, we trip ourselves up. And at the end of the day, all we want to do is get more people registered. Together, we should be able to do that in more significant numbers than we are and than we have in the past. And we start by having a much more cohesive, collegiate, clear vision and message to everybody. Because the moment, you know what it's like, the moment you put a small barrier in front of someone, they're going to switch off. We have to make life easier for everybody, and that's not what we do. I guess more broadly speaking, one of my observations is the charity sector is awash with wonderful people, well-meaning people, driven people. But that's not enough. Just because your heart's in the right place, it doesn't necessarily mean that together we're doing as much as we possibly can to solve the problem of blood cancer, in our case at DKMS. And one thing I want to do is make sure that we nurture and we care for the hearts and minds of those people who are working within our sector, but direct and challenge, so we think more aspirationally. I mean, I've got a foot in both camps in that my career has been based in the private sector, where challenge and growth and not accepting mediocrity it's never been part of my mindset, nor has it been part of the mindset of those people I've been lucky enough to call colleagues, especially in the investment banking world. And it's a different mindset in the charity sector. And what I'm not trying to do is go all in private sector crazy, but what I am saying is, let's think a bit bigger, let's be more aspirational. And I always bring it back to the story, and as I say, if the person who said this to me is listening, she knows it comes from a good place. When I set up 10,000 donors, I was told it was probably too much. We don't get that many in a year. You might want to maybe get 1,000 donors. And back to your very first question, is it ego driven? Maybe, I don't know. But it was red rag to a bull. It's like, no, 10,000 should be a starter, not just because it is a stretch, but because the problem isn't going to be fixed by 1,000 people. I mean, the statistics are quite scattergun anyway. But broadly speaking, you might get one match for every 2,000 people who register. So what's the point in registering 1,000 people? 10,000 wasn't enough.
And just for clarity, when you say one match for obviously every 1,000 people that register, that reduces, if you're from a ethnic background, significantly reduces.
Yeah. Significantly, yeah. I mean, we're talking, again, the data isn't the best.
Like very high level.
High level. If you're white European, you might have about 60 to 70% chance of finding a match today with those people on the register. Whereas for other people who are underrepresented, any other group, which is crazy given that the majority of the world are either mixed race or not white European, you might, if you're lucky, you've got about a 30% chance of finding that match. And that health inequality is something which is wrong, and it can be fixed. And that's one of the huge drivers for me, in that whatever the cost, whether we're waiting for new technologies to come in, whether we're waiting for money and funding, these are all, for me, excuses. And it comes back to that, the challenge I face. My challenge to the guys at DKMS is think more aspirationally. Yes, if this is our baseline today, we need to be up here, not because it's Pete McCleave and his blooming insatiable ego and drive for bigger numbers, but it's because there are patients out there today, right now, as we're talking, someone somewhere of mixed heritage is going to get a phone call and they're going to have the carrot of hope dangled in that, oh, no, you've got a blood cancer, but, and they're not going to have that match. And it's just wrong, because there's a technology that can help save someone's life. The only thing missing is that stem cell donor match. And so for me, we need to think more aspirationally, not just because, again, it's me pushing it, because we need to more expeditiously get more people registered today to help those patients of today and tomorrow. And that's the key driver for me. So again, the challenge really is it's pushing and stretching and getting people to think beyond what they see in front of them and making them realize they're way more capable. There's literally nothing special about me. I should not be able to do an Ironman. I've seen some incredible people do these iron distance triathlons, and yet here I am just giving it a go, and I managed to do it. If I can do it, anyone can. And equally, if we can achieve 60 or 70,000 new registrants in a year, we should be able to triple that with the right focus and resource and aspiration. I think the most important thing is that belief in the aspiration. And so for me, my job now, leading DKMS, is to make sure that every single person, like I said, I want everyone who comes and works at DKMS to go through this organization and be a better person. And one of those things is thinking aspirationally, thinking beyond what's in front of you and believing you can do it.
I think that's where the kind of sweet spot comes, right, between like the private sector and the third sector. So currently in the role that I'm in, where I look after charity partnerships at Amazon, it is very different because I'm sitting on the corporate side of the table, but I see the challenges that the third sector face. And I see that, when we're trying to move at 100 miles per hour because we can, it's not as easy. And it's really, how do you find that balance without obviously overburdening that sector, but then trying to, just finding the balance and trying to work in almost like a synergy when you're coming from two different worlds almost. And it's fascinating. Obviously, you've gone from like investment banking into the third sector. Again, this is like a follow-up question, but how do your like DKMS colleagues now like respond to that kind of, think big mindset, be ambitious? How is that translated into your workspace now with your team now that you're working with?
You'd have to ask them now. I'm not quite sure. I try to be mindful of my engagement with people and not push too hard. I've only been in the role for maybe 7 or 8 months, so still quite fresh into it, but there is no time to wait. And so I do expect us to think more aspirationally. I do expect us to take ownership and accountability specifically of our areas of responsibility and recognizing that is hugely important. How they react, I mean, so far the reaction has been positive as far as I can see anyway. What it will look like next week, next month, next year, we'll just have to see. Again, I just have to keep bringing it back to fundamental principles, and I have my own management principles articulated. I've set it out in my plan and vision for the DKMS, but it always comes down to the how, and I'll repeat it over and over again to the guys I work with. The goals and the targets will come. I genuinely believe that. I'm not concerned about that as long as we do it in the right way. And getting people on board, being clear, being direct, making sure we have the right people in the organization, and not just, again, it's not just having good, well-meaning people there. It's making sure those good, well-meaning people are able to do the job. Because at the end of the day, no one wants to spend their time doing a job they really dislike or they're really not suited to. And there are certain skills that we require. There are certain things that have to happen. You have to be able to have some really upsetting conversations with parents and family members and friends of people who are going through the ringer because someone they know, whether they're directly related or not, has been diagnosed with something they never expected to get. They're really hard conversations. They're really emotionally draining conversations, and the summative effect of those engagements can be quite challenging, especially if you're fresh and young into your career. And I'm aware of that, and we as a team are aware of that. So you've got to be, it's not just turning up and doing the right thing. You've got to want to make sure that you're in it and able to do it for your own benefit too. And I think we're in a good space in DKMS now that we've got some wonderful people. We really do have some great people. We just got to make sure we look after them and make sure that they're able to do the job. And if we can create that environment, then fantastic. And if it means that I'm pushing a bit harder or my expectations are a bit higher, I don't shy away from that because, again, it's all about succeeding for the organization. And yes, I don't want to keep, I will never draw it back to the emotional connection to why we're doing it for these patients with blood cancer. Because I think if that's front and center of everything we talk about, it will become emotionally draining for everybody. They will benefit as long as we do our job well. And so for me, the employees, the people who work for DKMS, who volunteer for DKMS, they are front and center of everything that we do. It may not be the thing which people would expect me to say, but I don't put the patients central to everything. because I think by doing that, we put far too much pressure on everybody to influence things that they can't influence. The reality is that patient has been diagnosed, and we can only influence certain part of their particular story. My focus is on everyone who works and engages with DKMS, and I think if we get that right, then the patients and their families and friends will benefit by default anyway. And that's the how for me, is making sure that our people at DKMS, that the right people in the right place, the right direction and support, and then all the other stuff, the peripherals, all the other things, those patients and families, they will benefit because we're doing the best job that we possibly can.
I completely agree. And I think now working so closely with the third sector and some of the wonderful people that we work alongside, you can see that they really want to do that job. And that's why they're in that role. It's difficult being in the third sector. Like some of the times I see, obviously, like you said, like some of the things they have to deal with, and also just their appetite for risk. And it's not an easy industry to be in. And so it's so wonderful when I meet people like obviously you and so many other people that I meet in the job that I'm in, to see that passion and that drive to really just do the right thing. So I think as we head towards the end, for people that have got this far in the podcast and they're still listening, could you walk us through and say they want to find out more? Could you walk us through what it is like and what's the process if someone wanted to sign up onto the stem cell register list? Because I feel like there's a lot of, firstly, lack of awareness, and I was definitely one of those people before my dad got diagnosed. And also there's a lot of misconception. As soon as you hear, stem cell donor, bone marrow transplant, all of these things, I remember for me in 2017, I was like, transplant, what does that mean? Like stem cell, no idea, right? Until obviously I had someone who's diagnosed with it, and then I, went through the whole process. So very, very simply, like for someone who's never heard of it and they're like, okay, we want to get involved, what do they do?
I'll start by saying that it's all about making a decision from a point of education. Now, there's nothing that I want to do, nor anybody at DKMS. We're not going to strong arm anybody into doing anything they don't want to do. The worst thing that people do is to be guilted into acting. And not really either fully understanding or really wanting to go through with it anyway. That's where I want to start, because what we do, ultimately, we do a number of things at DKMS to try and solve this problem. The lack of numbers of people on the register, but also that lack of diversity. We want to register more people to become stem cell donors, and you do that by being aged between 17 and 55, going to dkms.org.uk and requesting a swab kit. And if you are aged between 17 and 55, and in reasonable health, then we'll send you that kit, and you takes 3 minutes, do it at home. You'll pop it back into the prepaid envelope and send it back to DKMS. We'll process that, and then you'll be on the register up until your 61st birthday. We've spoken about the numbers. The odds of being a match are super, super slim, but what you'll have done is improve the chances, improve the odds, built up the register by having one extra person on there. Now, again, you have to be comfortable with the process of how you donate stem cells. And I've been through both of these, so I can tell you firsthand what it's like. In 90% of cases, it's a blood draw. So you go into one of the private facilities, needle in one arm, needle in the other, the stem cells are taken from your bloodstream, and then the blood is returned back to your other arm. But those stem cells are then donated to the patient in need. Now, in about 10% of cases, they'll take it under a general anaesthetic from your hip bone. And that's usually when a child's involved, because they'll need a much more concentrated donation of the stem cells, and the stem cells come from your bone marrow. Now, that'll be an overnight stay, again, one of the private facilities. All lost earnings are covered, travel costs are covered, food is covered. You can take someone with you. We'll pay for all of that. And again, it's a general anaesthetic. It's about a 25 to 30 minute procedure. When you wake up, it feels like someone's punched you on the hip. That's about it. I mean, I was awake when they took my bone marrow aspirate, and it really, I hate needles. I've been stabbed and jabbed monthly for the last 8 years. I still hate needles. And yet, I'm telling you, hand on heart, the process of taking it from my hip bone, felt nothing. I was chatting away to the nurse. In actual fact, the nurse who did it to me, as we were talking, it transpired I used to manage her boyfriend when I was working at another bank in Chester.
What a small world.
I know. And I was thinking, right, okay, were we friends? Because the last thing I wanted to do was upset this nurse while she was... Anyway, by the by. Again, you've got to be comfortable with both before you sign up. And both are painless. The upside, obviously, is you could potentially, what you're offering is that life-saving chance for someone, should you be a match. But again, educate yourself. Go to the website DKMS, ask us questions. and only then make your decision. Because I personally rather people say thanks, but no thanks, understanding everything rather than just saying no because of the misconceptions that you spoke about before. So again, in summary, to register,
clear, yeah.
super simple. It's cheek swab. The same thing we've been shoving up our noses during COVID, only it's not up your nose, it's in your cheek. 3 minutes, super gentle, doesn't hurt, no gagging or retching, costs you nothing. That's how you register. The other thing we look at doing is spreading awareness far and as wide as we can do. We struggle a bit with the echo chamber phenomenon in that we've got a great online presence, but once you're on there and well, we just keep telling you the same thing. Everybody has a network, be it family, friends, whatever. And if you can share the material that we have, just tell one person and they tell one person and they tell one person. We're aspiring to achieve that exponential growth of awareness and activity on the back of it. So second thing is, please use your network, spread the message as far as wide as you can, because this problem, this lack of numbers and lack of diversity is eminently fixable once we've got that critical mass of people globally registered. And that's what we're trying to achieve. So please learn about us and register if you can. Please, whether you want to register or not, please take the message, spread it as far as wide as you possibly can as well. And the third thing is, we're fundraising, we're a charity. Anything, if you can spare a few pounds, it's always going to be very, very welcome. Now, we don't mandate that we will pay for the kits, we'll pay for your processing, because the most important thing for us is making sure we get those life-saving matches on the register. But if you're looking for, donate a few quid, or if you've got some kind of corporate charity partnerships, you're willing to open up doors in your own business, your own work stream, we're always very, very keen to have those conversations, because at the end of the day, we've got to remain commercially viable, and that's one of the fundamental ways in which we do it. So please educate yourself to potentially register. Please spread the message far and wide. If you can help us with the fundraising as well, do a crumble rally, go write your own song. We've got places where we're sponsoring to do a Sahara desert trek at the end of this year. You want to take part in that? Let us know. It all helps. So they're the three things. That's what it's all about.
Well, I mean, those are my three questions, which you've answered all in one. So that's brilliant. Because I was going to ask, what can businesses do to get involved? And then I guess lastly, a bit of a controversial one, but I mean, we may have people listening who might turn around and say, yeah, okay, completely understand, but it doesn't really affect me. So, why should I get involved, right? And I attest to being one of those people. Before my dad got diagnosed, I was very donate. I wasn't very shamelessly involved at all. So, I mean, what would you say to someone listening who's like, yeah, but it doesn't affect me, so,
I fully understand the mindset. The world's a busy, busy place. And for every piece of McCleave who's, extolling the virtues of supporting DKMS, there'll be another equally valid and valuable conversation to be had for another charity, another cause. And I get it. And the reality is that you can't engage with everything for a couple of reasons. First of all, your brain would explode. If you engage with every single ask, it's too much. Life is busy. We've got our own lives to lead. And, I have no intention of, like I say, guilting or strong-arming anybody. And the second thing is, you'd be destitute yourself, because you'd be giving your money away to everybody. I guess all I can do is educate. I'm not trying to bully. I'm not trying to emotionally drag people to do anything. I just want them to hear, to understand that there's an end to our fight once we've got that organic growth of people on the stem cell donor register. And we can't wait for politicians. We cannot wait for the significant institutions to fix this, because the last 30 to 40 years, they haven't. And it's incumbent upon people like you, Anna, and myself, who suddenly found ourselves personally engaged with this, to use our voice and maybe use our drive to try and raise awareness. And that's all we can do. At the end of the day, for somebody who doesn't want to do it, totally respect that. Again, I'd rather they make the decision not to engage in that position of education than go, you know what, it's just not for me. And that's okay. I understand. It's totally okay, because I'm quite sure they're more likely than not to be good people anyway. I believe this wholeheartedly. Forget what the world tells us. There are more good people out there in the world than not. For anyone who doesn't feel they want to engage with us, I've got no doubts they'll engage with something else and do some great and good over there anyway. So all I and we can do is talk, tell, encourage, and then let the universe do its thing.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Pete. That's the end of my questions. You've ended it so well, and thank you so much for your time. I will share all the links in the description about, obviously, the website, how to sign up, and just around the education piece. Thank you so much for your time.
No, and you, Anna. Thanks for inviting me on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Amazing. If you've got this far and you're not related to me or my friend, then thank you so much. I really, really appreciate that you're listening. I started this podcast out of my own curiosity about how influential people got to where they were, but it's given me so much more than that. As you can see from today's episode, deep, meaningful conversations with change makers, passionate individuals. I really hope you enjoyed today's episode with Pete. The topic we covered is so, so important. Finding a stem cell match for a donor and their family means giving them another chance at life. I am a true example of that. And awareness is key, and I'd be so grateful if you could like, share, and help spread this message further. Thank you again for tuning in, and I can't wait to share more inspiring conversations with you soon.